for another Ask Vanessa Anything. It's been a few months. I think the last one was in February. And we're back for Memorial Day, May Q&A. And we had a lot of great questions submitted over the past few months and weeks that we're excited to dive into. Before we do, I just want to acknowledge that there's been a theme emerging in my life and in the lives of other parents. You know, I have anywhere from 20 to 40 clients at any given time of families that are working on their resilience tools, working on building the kind of family life that they've dreamed of, that they really want to create. And of course, that means resolving challenges and problems and getting through tough developmental stages. So we're here for all of that. And what I want to share is that community is the living, breathing village that has been so essential for many reasons. It's first of all to combat any sense of isolation or aloneness with the parenting journey. So, you know, getting into cohorts like our program and or, you know, groups that discuss and share openly and honestly the ups and downs of parenting, resource sharing. For my journey, as some of you might have noticed on if you're a Facebook friend and or following our Instagram page, you might have noticed that I am expecting a baby in late August. And the sense of community that's building around the birth and the welcoming in of this child has just been tremendous. And I'm even wearing a shirt that was given to me from somebody's maternity stash that they don't need anymore. And it's a lovely color, don't you think? This necklace and bracelet was made within the context of community during our yearly Motivation Mastery Weekend that we do every summer as an exercise of using creativity to spark interest and get that intrinsic motivation going. Just this last weekend, about 10 days ago, I witnessed an event thrown for my dance community of about 300 people. We were the people that set up and broke down all of the dance spaces and decorations. We cooked every meal, we cleaned every meal. We were the teachers, the DJs, the performers, the organizers, and even something as simple as, you know, helping clean up part of the grounds as we left. Everybody participated. And it was because of that community effort that we were able to create something really wonderful for ourselves. If you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, let me know and I can tell you more about the dance community I'm a part of here in the Bay. But so much to say as we come back to the parenting piece. You know, I just went and picked up something from Facebook Marketplace, a changing table for my new babe. And the woman said to me, she's a solo mom by choice too. And she said, I believe in mutual aid. And I just love this groundswelling of support and understanding that it really does take that village and that community in order to raise resilient children and to, you know, be resilient ourselves. So thank you for being a part of the community. If you asked a question, if you're listening to this, if you're just watching, always appreciate sharing our stuff so other people know that there are community-minded folks gathering around this concept of raising resilient children together. So like, subscribe, share, you know, tag someone, and let us know what you're getting out of these sessions so we can get a sense of how we can continue to support our community. We work on many different levels. We have these free calls. We have free master classes a couple times a year. We go to schools. That's one of the main things we do. We go to work and give workshops at schools locally and outside of the area. So no matter where you live, if it's something you'd be interested in doing, please go ahead and send us an email at raisingourresilience@gmail.com or go to my website and you can look at host a workshop at vanessacallahan.com, just my name.com and /host workshop. And you can check out what you could bring to your community next school year. We've done over 100 now. So it's been a really lovely way for us to contribute to the community, and we keep it budget friendly or use title funds. So your PTA and your school should be pretty happy to hear about that. And then the other way we work is with, of course, private clients who seek out one-on-one support and on an ongoing basis, and or folks who'd like to join our community where we have multiple coaches rallying around families. We have a marriage coach, an occupational therapist, a leadership coach, myself, and also 2 other parenting coaches who've been training with me for over 3 years each. One is 4 and one's 5 years in to their training and their program. So excellent cohort of people who are really interested and supportive of each other. So we'd just love to see you think about where you want to engage. And we have a special opportunity to join a 6-month cohort starting in July, which is rare. Usually it's a year because of my upcoming maternity leave. So if you've always wanted to join the immersion program, but weren't able to see yourself committing to a year, there's a 6-month opportunity. So that's pretty special. I want to make sure everybody knows about. I'll be at the bottom of this post are a couple different ways to get in touch with us and to grab a free guide and even a free complimentary session with me if you'd like. All right, so I think that's all of the announcements. Let's get into the questions. We were asked by several folks about how to get through difficult family transitions and changes, and or where the situation is that there's an adult that is making things much harder for the situation. So I'm going to start with Alex's question. Alex asks, how can I respond effectively to my daughter's I don't care attitude, sassy responses, and tendency to hit when she's angry? She's 8 years old, and the context is that she's adjusting to living in 2 homes on a week-on, week-off custody schedule. Alex, what an excellent question. If you want to read any of these questions, by the way, they're in the description of this post, this video. So how can you respond effectively? Well, effectiveness can happen on many different levels. So what I would say first is that when we think of effectiveness, we're thinking about results often, right? We're thinking of she'll hit less, which is a great goal to have. She'll choose other strategies to express her anger, find more opportunities to release and vent her frustration or challenges. That's another great outcome. The other that I always want us all to be tracking is that we are preserving the core qualities of our relationships through these kind of goals that we want to shift behavior, we want to shift outcomes. We're always keeping an eye on the relationship. So Alex, in the transition to a 2-home shared custody schedule, kids often do, in a sense, regress to behaviors that you maybe haven't seen in a while. And it's not because they are deliberately choosing to regress. It's often something that is very much out of their control in the impulses. So she's having an impulse to physically express her anger. She's oftentimes we'll see kids do that towards the parent they feel the most emotionally attached and connected to. So they're kind of going to let it all hang out and maybe even direct it at you. So just knowing that is a normal baseline of how kids can respond to big changes. They say there's only so many major life events, right? Life, death, marriage, change of job, change of location, and marriage. And the other flip side of that is divorce, right? So, and moving. So if there's something that's going on, a couple of those things, right? And I would build in some release valve time. If you think of pressure building up, where maybe you both start to do something very physical together, like racing down the block on the way home from school, getting on a scooter and bike, or you jog or something, and you get active, get your heart rate up, let the breathing happen, and pause and check in along the way. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Anything you want to talk about? Because what we've noticed is that when you allow the body to sort of start to release tension naturally through activity, then the emotions often also get a release and can be expressed. So that would be a way to shift this physicality of hitting you towards a different kind of way of being physical. In the moment, being very firm and clear and loving, as always, with any boundary, getting really clear outside of the moment. What would we in my program call the red zone? Like, what is a red zone behavior and how that's going to be responded to? I'd love to help you strategize about what you exactly do in the moment and what plan you make. But the most important thing for you to take away right now is that you do it collaboratively with her. So she gets your compassionate understanding of like why she might be having big feelings right now. You have your compassionate response that she's having these impulses that she probably can't help, and making a plan together of how each of you are going to meet that moment, right? So of course you would want to collaborate with her, and I don't want to tell you exactly what that plan looks like because I would rather walk you through how to build that plan with her. Does that make sense? But what it could look like, it may not, is that if she starts to use her body, you immediately put something between you two, like you go stand behind a couch or you grab a pillow, put it between you. And if she's not able to get control of her body after a reminder, maybe a code word, and in a little bit of time, and she's starting to continue to try to get past that barrier and does something, still continues to be unsafe with your body and her body, then there's a really clear line of like, either she needs to leave the space or you need to leave the space until we're back in control. And there's nothing like, there's not really necessarily a punishment about it. It's more of an acknowledgement of a need. It's like, wow, you're really angry. You seem to really need to express that. I want to hear you out, but I really need you to stop trying to hit me and be safe with your body and my body, right? That sort of thing. That's what it could look like, but she might come up with something else. I've had kids say, I'll stomp away and slam the door. And you're like, you know what? We'll accept that for now because we're in this difficult time. It's not where we want to end up, but it's what we'll do for now. We call that yellow zone in my program. Green zone might be like, I will take a deep breath and walk away if I need to, and without slamming the door, stopping, so there's these kind of levels of what we're working towards. Just that alone allows the kid to know it's not so black and white, because when we put things into black and white, they start to think that if I step into the black, then I'm bad. Not that just my behavior's bad, but I'm bad. And there's something wrong with me or my feeling I'm having, which is not the message we necessarily want them to take away, because then they're starting to think that I cannot trust you with my real feelings. You're going to punish me if I share them with you. So you might end up pushing them away and having them shut down from that, or you might have them get even more angry and more escalated. The other thing you should know, last tip here, because it does sound like anger is like the core emotion that's being expressed, is try to listen to the message in her anger and respond to it directly. So you're saying you're mad that you have to go to your dad's tomorrow. Or you're saying that you're mad that you don't have the same toy there that you have here, right? And just whatever the message is as many times. Yeah, because this is okay. So you're mad because this, right? Did I get that right? As long as she's not trying to hit you, because it's not really necessarily reasonable for kids to just go away, resolve their anger, and come back calmly with their message. Sometimes they need to work it through with you, and that might be unpleasant and uncomfortable and hard. But as long as they're not in the red zone, even they could be in the yellow zone, maybe step outside so they can yell if they need to, yell these things to you. The more you can say, I'm hearing your message. I got it. Here's the message I'm hearing. Anything else? Did I get that right? Allows her to get those messages outside of her system and know that someone else is holding that information. And it's not just her that's like gripping it in her body and in her mind and in her heart. And then, of course, you have more data, more information about what could be happening once she's calmed down, and you can revisit that. So is this something that's really bothering you, or do you feel like you had enough, like sharing it with me was enough? This is something we want to work through. So this whole process, it's called emotion coaching. I teach it all the time to my clients. Sometimes the very first thing we do together, depending on what the need is. If emotions are running high, we often talk about this right away. I have some other ideas about the custody schedule that I would probably like to talk through with you. Because the next person asked a similar question, I think we can touch on it. So I think it's Rinat, but it's Rinat, Rinat. She asked a question: how can I best support my daughters, ages 6 and 10, so similar age range, through our recent divorce, while also improving emotional regulation for both them and me? So Rinat asked this question in regards to how to support children through such a big life transition. I touched on this a little bit with Alex's question, quite a bit actually. And I think that it's same goes. Like if the emotional regulation needs are not only around anger, maybe they're around feeling nervous or anxious or afraid. Maybe it's around sadness and grief. By the way, under anger is often some other emotion. So Alex, be looking out for that too. When we are sad, it's often a message of, I know what I want. I used to have it, now I don't. So there's a sense of loss. When we're feeling scared, it's, I don't understand this feeling. I need help with that. Or I know what I want, but I have no idea how to get it. Or I don't even know what I want, right? So there's a lot of kind of fear of like feeling ungrounded and unfocused. So we need to help kids with that. And then of course with anger, their message is usually, I want something and you or the situation isn't giving it to me. And they're feeling really worked up about that. So when we talk about emotion coaching, one of the things we can do to add on to what I shared about Alex's question is we can get down to that core emotion message and make sure it's being heard, even if it's an emotion besides anger, right? So anger, sadness, fear, even happiness, right? Celebrations. Oh, you're really happy because you wanted this and it happened, is usually the core message there. When we do that, we are emotion coaching. We're building self-expression, self-awareness, and self-regulation for the kids. There's this phrase, I think it's coined by Dr. Daniel Siegel, and it's also used by Jane Nelson in Positive Discipline, called "Name it to tame it." So the idea that if you can name an emotion, then you can kind of tame it. And what it is a cognitive intervention where you're engaging your kind of upstairs brain, your prefrontal cortex and your gray matter, your more advanced side of your brain, your language center, to put some definition around what it is you're experiencing. Like I think it was Rumi who said, and Brene Brown quotes this in one of her books, emotion is the ocean and language is the shore. So you can imagine emotion, the water sloshing is kind of, constantly changing, crests and waves crashing, ripples, stillness, stuff going on under the water. And then once it hits the shore, then it's almost like, oh, now we know where we are, right? And we have like some kind of sturdiness to be able to interact with in a structured, hopefully productive way. So name it to tame it, help them with that. And it's not just tell me how you're feeling. How are you feeling? Well, let's name the emotion. It's really looking for that message behind the emotion. Just the word itself, like I'm mad, can be helpful. But if you have more of a sense of like, I'm angry when this happens because of this. And there could be with 6, 8, and 10-year-olds a nuance, especially around this time. The other thing about divorce that's really tricky, and this is the thing I was going to touch on, are two-family households, is trying to get coordinated across households when the primary relationship is strained. So a lot of times the reason for the divorce or the separation or having two households is because there's already a strain or a difficulty between the adults around lifestyle, communication, betrayal, like all kinds of things can be in there. I'm a child of parents two divorced sets of parents, and I've also been a step parent to children who were in two households. So I'm very familiar with this. And coordination between the adults can be really tricky. So I would just say, first of all, let's please get as grounded and real about how well that coordination is going and where it has its challenges. And build off the things that are working well and acknowledge the challenges. And if you need support around the challenges so that you can get more on the same page, probably never perfectly. It's part of why you have two households. Things need to be different, maybe, right, in each household. But if you can get more coordinated, more on the same page, using similar language, that will really serve your kids. It's no surprise then that I've had tons of, two household parenting teams work with me, either privately or in group settings, so that they have similar language that they're pulling from, similar strategies. And there's a third party who's getting to know each parent's parenting style and helping them to get on the same page about how they're going to respond to big emotions, out of bounds behaviors, how they're going to set up routines and expectations, how they're going to deal with conflict, all of those skills, because it's very difficult. Oftentimes, it can be difficult for the two adults to do all of that on their own. So if that's you, if you feel like this could be the right time to help you to get coordinated, I would recommend you hopping on a free session with me, and we can just talk through, what that could look like to get you some support and also give you some ideas that are more tailored to your specific situation. Because maybe there are things that are going really well that you weren't able to share in your question that we could build off of, and a lot more can happen than I'm able to perceive at this time. Okay, so I have a question that I'm just a trigger warning. There's a mention of domestic violence. There's no details, but just in case that's something that you would rather not hear about, this would be the time to hit pause or speed ahead a couple minutes. Because I have a question here. Molly asks, how can we create more unity as a family, especially for my 5-year-old who has experienced trauma from domestic violence? Okay, well, what I want to say is that trauma comes in so many shapes, sizes, and impacts for the future. Sometimes we call it trauma with a little t if it's something that can resolve in the moment. But if you have a lot of them, that could be considered, chronic or complex exposure to trauma and can lead to things like CPTSD. There are also traumas with a big T that are more long lasting and impactful and often alter a child's or a person's sense of self or sense of place in the world or their like primary relationships. So that could be death of a parent or witnessing a really violent act or being in a war-torn zone and being in fear of an attack, things like that. So, or like a medical trauma, right? So when we're thinking about trauma, I think it's really important for us to get grounded and real and also talk to a professional, usually a therapist, about what the exposure has been and what the best practices would be at this time, given your child's current expression of their healing around that trauma. Couple of things that tend to be universal that I can speak to here is that you'll have more unity if you really show up for the child's like sense of safety and confirm their identity outside of that event. So let's start with a safety one. Being that safe person they can bring things to, you don't shut down their emotions when they want to share them with you. You accept whatever expression they have to the degree that everybody's still safe in the room. I talked a bit about that earlier in the session, responding to Alex's daughter regressing to hitting. But the idea of one of our team, the ways that we're a team is that we work to keep our bodies and other people's bodies safe. And so beyond that, though, like allowing for a broad amount of expression and some things that are okay for now is really important. Making sure that they have some way of communicating with at least one trusted adult privately in case they're not, that they have that sort of more withdrawn personality or reaction to trauma, where they really need to be kind of warmed up into a sharing space. They may not otherwise open up to you, and they might carry a lot on their own. And then I would say also asynchronistic communication, like where they have an ability to express something through art, through theater, puppetry, writing once they're writing, voice notes. That's why some therapists use like a sand tray with figurines so they can act things out. But kind of allowing for multiple ways of kids to express how they're feeling and kind of work out the things that they've experienced. And I would have some mantras around safety, even the simple one from early years, like mommy always comes back, like if you leave and come back, or if you're going to work or going to school, it's like, letting your child know exactly when they're going to see you next, what that's going to look like. Having a really stable routine is helpful, and that's very mapped out and that they've had a part of creating. At 5, they can start to do that. Making the chart together after you've gone through the steps and talked through what order they should be in, how long it takes, that sort of thing. 5-year-olds can rise to that occasion, and it can really be really grounding for them. My kids who've been through trauma and or are neurodivergent, in my classrooms always wanted to know the schedule of the day. They wanted to be able to ground into the structure of what the environment was providing, help them organize themselves internally. And so I would give them a daily rundown of the schedule. When they're old enough to read, I would write it out on the board. And I tell you, the kids that are going through a lot emotionally and or have that history and or are neurodivergent, especially my ADHDers, would stand in front of that and look at it and really study it, because it was very much helpful for them, again, to organize themselves internally and orient themselves to the day and to the activities and expectations. So all of that can be really grounding. And the word unity brings to mind family meetings of some kind where you're going over the calendar and you're talking through what could be useful to know coming up, anything that's a deviation from the routines. You can also use it to explore coping tools. You can use family meetings are great, and it's actually something we build up to in my program, right? By like month 4 or 5, I'm saying, if you haven't done one yet, it's time. You've got the tools. Let's do it. Just trained that in May, actually, with my current cohort in month 5. Been mentioning it since month 2. But and I even had some families who were like, I'm not sure about whether I'm going to do this or that. So anyways, that's sort of how it's set up. And once you have that format to be able to work through things together, that's really helpful. And studying for the kids, they'll even look forward to it. I've seen kids who have experienced trauma really want to go back to the agenda to review notes of how did we solve it before. I've seen those kids be really proud of the like routines or expectations or coping charts that they come out of those meetings with. I've seen those kids request family meetings when they see something's not feeling right for them. I've also seen them do a lot around like adding to the next meeting agenda with topics that they want to address, those sort of things. So it's a pretty powerful tool. So next I have Molly. Let me know if you have any other questions about that. It's a big one. There's a lot to explore there, and I would love to hear more also about any professionals that you're engaging with, and I can help you find someone locally if you haven't yet, or if you have questions about. There's just like a lot of different methods that people take in child psychology and MFT work. So sometimes I help people sort through which ones seem like a good fit, and I'd be happy to share my 2 cents on that. So feel free to join hop on my calendar for a session. Next question is about managing emotions, and I actually have about 4 or 5 questions about this. So I'll be talking through this in a more ages and stages kind of way, because they're just we organize it that way. So if you are Janae, Clarice, Erin, Elizabeth, or Nita, just know that we're going to get your question in this section, and I'll go one at a time. But you'll just know that this could all be pertinent to your questions. Yes. So here we go. So Ginny asks, what are some effective ways to manage emotions at home, especially when things feel overwhelming? She has kids ages 1 and 8. I also have from Clarice, what are some practical ways to improve emotional regulation at home with a 5-year-old and toddler, almost 3? And then the other one that I feel like all come together for this first half of this is from Erin. Erin says, as a full-time working mom and teacher, how can I better handle emotional ups and downs for myself and my children who are ages 4 and 14? So we have a pretty big age span here from 1 to 14, but we have like kind of a clump of the 5, 3, 1, and 4-year-old first. So we'll talk about them, and then we'll move on to middle childhood. Well, what I would say is that when we're looking at how to effectively manage emotions at home, it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the session, that that it's really important to make sure that it's a space where it's okay to express your emotions. A lot of us don't know how much, or don't realize how much we are giving that the opposite message, that it's not okay to have an emotional expression. And oftentimes what's happening is that we are responding to the behavior that's attached to the emotion, instead of separating the two enough to say it's okay to have this emotion, but it's not okay to have this behavior. So that's the first distinction, if you can make that. And basically I call it, don't pick a fight with a feeling. Don't pick a fight with a feeling. It's not the anger, the sadness, the fear, or anxiety, or glee that's the issue. It's the way it's being expressed. If you are finding yourself starting to want to stop something in the middle of an emotional expression, it's usually the behavior, not the emotion. And you can be explicit. You can say, hey, it's okay to be angry, and I need you to stomp away or throw something soft instead, right? Redirecting to the safe behavior. It's okay to be sad, and we're going to find a way to stay at this party for another 30 minutes. But why don't we take a little walk and see if that helps, right? It's okay to be, or like, we're not going to destroy the photo of our loved one that we're missing or something. We're gonna put it away where we don't have to see it for a little while, and then we'll take it back out. Um, it's okay to be a little scared. It's okay to be anxious, but that doesn't mean we get to not bite our nails until they start to hurt, until we hurt our fingers, right? Instead, we're going to find something else we can chew on, or we can find a listening partner. Like, so there's this redirection that we can do towards desired coping tools and strategies without saying that the emotion is wrong. So I think it's very important for us to not just know that that's a good practice, but to know why. So if we can all just rally around the idea that emotions are here to stay, we're not going to get rid of them. Experiencing difficult emotions that can bring like a sense of pain and suffering is part of the human experience. If kids don't get a chance to experience those emotions and or work through them with help and on their own, then they will have less sense of like resilience and confidence in the world, and might also not be able to really handle things with resilience. So it's part of the growing up process for them to experience adversity and adverse emotions to a point. Obviously, if we're talking about systemic changes that are needed, equity and access to resources, we need to fight those battles too. But what I'm talking about is like your everyday sort of emotions that show up when things don't go their way, when things are difficult, when things are uncertain. Okay. And there's a reason why we have so many, like, oh my gosh, thousands of studies on trying to understand our emotions, because they are universal. They keep happening to us and with us and through us. So we need to make peace with that first and foremost. I call it getting down with the emotions. Like, let's get down with that sadness, that fear, and that anger, friends, because they're here to stay. Becoming self-aware yourself of like which of these emotions are the hardest for you to be with. That's something we work through in my program, and updating our stories about what those emotions mean. Some people have really difficult associations and identity problems connected to these emotions. Like if you get scared, then you're weak. If you cry, then you're also weak. Those kinds of things. If you're angry, then you're out of control, and there's all this idea that you're going to be a menace or something. That it's highly disrespectful too, right? And even the fear can be considered highly disrespectful if you're being shy or embarrassed easily or scared. So there's all these associations we make with these emotions, and we really need to be self-reflective about the associations we've created with these emotions, because they will show up in our parenting. It will show up so loud and clear. I definitely had to work on these for years, friends, before I was able to really unpack all those different associations I had made over my formative years, and societally that we make towards having emotions and experiencing emotions and expressing emotions. There's a lot of work to do around gender, around this, cultural expectations. And there are times and places too that are safer or less safe to express emotions. And so alongside honoring emotions, we're also teaching kids which contexts are, safe. In some cases, we're talking about things like code switching, what spaces are safe to express anger and which ones aren't, and et cetera. So there's a whole lot of nuance here. Definitely not trying to oversimplify it. But what I want to say is like embrace emotions, embrace them as much as you can. And sometimes I think of it as almost like, oh, it's here, like, oh, sadness is here. Got it. Oh, anger is here. Oh, or we're experiencing fear right now. We're experiencing anxiety. Okay. Our body is on alert. Interesting. Our body is processing loss. Okay. Our heart is hurting, and in this way, we're allowing it to exist, right? And we're not trying to destroy it, control it, force it away, reject it, fight it. So that's the baseline for improving emotional regulation. If you and your child can really do that together over time, it's a wonderful foundation. That's why I love what my program's called, Foundations Family Foundations Immersion, because it's really, we're building foundations. Now, the next thing is that a lot of us haven't been taught a lot of healthy coping tools. As a matter of fact, when we fight a feeling, when we try to suppress it, control it, get rid of it, make it wrong, often the only coping tool is a little bit violent towards it, right? It's like or else or shame, right? Embarrassment, those kinds of things. So one thing I could say is that when we're experiencing these emotions and we allow ourselves to accept that they're here, the next thing is to get curious about what we might need. And I like to think of it on the nervous system level, but little kids, sometimes we just say, what does your heart need? What does your body need? Or what can we do? And you just start to do things that are healthier coping tools. And in the moment, sometimes you're just doing it, and then the child may or may not do it with you. The classic ones are like take a deep breath or take a break, right? There's so much more. I teach this for 3 days every winter in something called the Emotional Mastery Weekend, where we go over, 50 to 100 coping tool options and things you might not even think are coping tools that actually can be used as coping tools. Wonderful resources that we share during that weekend to start exploring it as a family. So once you have accepted that emotions are here and you've reflected on your own stories and narratives and biases you have against certain emotions, you start to express that really clearly and you start to move towards healthy coping tools. You're already giving them like deep life lessons on how to be an emotionally regulated person, helping them expand their vocabulary on their feelings beyond just the 3, like sad, happy, angry. You're already ahead of the curve of the average American. Most Americans have 3, on average, three emotions that they can name. So if we can get to 10, we're already way ahead of the curve. That's why I love to send people a feelings chart for my Emotional Mastery Weekend, so they can just put it right up on the wall and start using it as a family. So there's a lot here to explore. I think I've given you the most important kind of like root piece, because it's cute to put a chart up. It's life-changing to shift your relationship to emotions and emotional experiences. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. Okay. That's what I've seen time and time again in my own life. We all know those people who haven't gotten there yet, right? You can probably bring someone to mind right now who's not a very emotionally regulated person, and I bet they are not at peace with their emotions. I bet they don't have healthy coping tools, and I bet they don't communicate them well. Truth. And everybody can probably think of someone that's very well emotionally regulated, and they have all these skills. They can communicate their emotions. They're familiar with them. They have some coping tools in place, and they know how to kind of get to those core messages of what the emotion's trying to express, so they can make sense of it, they can understand it, and they can even act accordingly. Because guess what's underneath all these emotions? Sometimes something really, really valuable, even if it's just understanding how your nervous system works and what your triggers are and resolving them. But on the other end of the spectrum, sometimes these emotions are exactly the information we need in order to navigate a situation. We don't want people who are being exploited and oppressed to not be angry. We want them to be angry and maybe scared and upset, so that they can stay alert to the unfair conditions and do something about it, hopefully collectively, for example. We don't want a kid who's feeling uneasy around a certain adult to ignore those feelings. We want them to be able to assert what they want around their boundaries and create a sense of safety for themselves, and keep an eye on things. And that's healthy. That's good. That's a nervous system doing what it's designed to do. But what we end up experiencing a lot with kids and their limited life experience, especially at this age range, 0 to 8, let's say, is that they don't always, they don't have a perception database that's full and rich to be able to scale their response, so that sometimes their nervous system is just defaulting to safety first, and it's too big of a response, or they're not alert enough to danger, and we need to train their nervous system to pay attention more. I have a set of twins in my life, and watching them grow up was pretty wild, because one was completely risk averse, as far as I could tell, was always checking things out, very prudent. And the other one would walk off a cliff if their twin didn't say, "Hey, there's something there, you might fall over," you know. So we might be training in either direction. However, we don't want to shut it down. We want to tune it. We want to supply it with information and good life experience. We want to help them notice. We want to help them communicate. We want to help them grow. We're not trying to shut it down. Okay. Yeah. So that's where we're coming from. Each of you probably have unique questions. So I also recommend, if you'd like to get further support, go ahead and head over to the link at the bottom of this post where you can get a free consultation with me. I opened up some spaces in the next 2 weeks, so it's a good time to do that. I'm going to move on to an older group of kids that kind of builds off of what I just said. So Erin has their 14-year-old. Elizabeth also asks, in our large family, how can I support better emotional regulation across different personalities and needs? So this is kids ages 9 to 14. And then Nita has teens and says, with teens ages 14 and 18, how can I navigate emotional regulation in a way that supports both their independence and our relationship? Excellent questions, friends. You're just right on track with these questions. So a couple of things happening here. Erin, we haven't yet addressed the fact that you're a full-time working mom and teacher, and that is a high demand life. I know, because when I was step parenting my kids, I was also a full-time teacher. I had a 10 and 14-year-old at home, and I was teaching full-time. And that's how it was all the way through my stepson graduating high school. So I'm with you on that, the younger one. And I also want to address the large family and the want for independence and continue to strengthen your relationship. So let me start with this. When you get to, and this is even for your 8-year-old, for Janie, you know, I've been in classrooms of 3 to 6-year-olds, 6 to 9-year-olds, and then I've homeschooled and also raised kids over 9, all the way up to adulthood. So what we're going to be thinking about now is the gift of true empathy that shows up around 7.5 years old. Kids have a biological developmental leap. On average, the top of the bell curve is about 7.5, where they're actually able to take the perspective of another person and make that cognitive leap to imagine being in their shoes. Why this is significant is because when we want kids to have more emotional regulation in the context of a community, whether it's a classroom, a household, or the larger community, like let's say a Boy Scouts club or a sports team, or, you know, like an extended large family, we're thinking about how they're able to take into consideration the needs of others. They're able to modulate their behavior based on context, a little bit of that code switching and other ways that we need to do to make those modifications. It all starts to start to come online around 7.5 and just starts. And for some kids, it doesn't really resolve until their mid-20s. Like, it's not really finalized until they go through the whole young adult experience. And I've been in multiple workplaces and contexts of classes and dorms and, you know, trade school, wherever they end up, before they actually really fully fill out that picture that there are other people who have other perspectives, other needs, other beliefs, other, you know, ways that they're going to kind of be in the world, right, and operate. Like, even this, like the fact of neurodiversity starts to really click in their later years usually. So with all that in mind, we're thinking about a long-term project here. And when you're really busy, I think the best thing you can do is, and this is, you know, especially for Erin's question, and maybe Elizabeth, since you're in a large family, there's a lot going on, it's dynamic. You're going to really want to think about coordinating your efforts so that you have a regular standing meeting or time or cadence where you revisit some of the most essential tools that help kids to start to step into that ability to really work with others, contribute to others, empathize, cooperate. And kind of coming back to the family meeting format, something like it, but you're working on intrinsic motivation tools, and you're working on emotional regulation tools and conflict resolution tools as the top 3. And the reason why is because almost every situation has at least one of those things going on, where you're trying to problem solve, where you're wanting them to show up with good character, right? You'd like them to be emotionally regulated, internally motivated, and able to solve problems peacefully. So these life skills, as we build them across time with our kids from ages about 8 all the way up into adulthood, we're wanting to see that improve over time. And so it's not too early at age 7 and 8 to have kids, contribute meaningfully to that. As a matter of fact, by the time my third graders in my first or third grade class had seen it modeled for a couple of years and worked on these tools and skills in the classroom context, many of them, if not all of them, were able to run a class meeting and do it in a way that was fair, that was productive and organized, yielding really great problem solving and resolution to conflicts and problems. Of course, I was there to help and guide them, but they were very familiar with the structure and could do it themselves, all the way up until the later years. So I would think of it as a long-term skill building sort of commitment, and knowing that in the short term it might only make small changes, and then you'll have breakthroughs, and then you'll have a little small change, and then breakthrough. And that can look a lot of different ways. In my work, I like to say every 2 weeks is the right cadence for busy, parents and families to be like trying out new concepts. So you try something, you run it for a week or two around this age, 8, 9. The loop is a lot faster. It's almost daily with toddlers, and then every couple of days with preschoolers and kindergartners, maybe weekly, and first graders. But once you get to 8, 9, 10 and older, you can start to do every 2 weeks. And you set a goal and you're really apparent about it. It's like, I want us all to use more coping tools this next 2 weeks. Here's why I've been noticing this. Here's what I've been trying, and I think it's been helping. And I just would like to ask everybody in the family to pick something they're going to be trying for the next 2 weeks. We'll get back together and check in about how it's going. And when we see somebody doing something well, we're going to, acknowledge them and call it out and celebrate for them. Like, hey, you remember to take your breaths. Hey, you got your exercise today. Hey, you made sure to eat your protein bar or whatever it is that you're doing for improving your capacity to cope. And I've seen families do very well once the kids are 8, 9, 10 and older, setting personal goals that the whole family is aware of. And sometimes family goals too. Like, we're all going to work on, pausing and choosing something to settle our nervous system when we start to feel like dysregulated, or my nomenclature that I like to use in my program, or we feel our lids coming off. When you make that commitment and you see it as a long-term investment, I've seen it make lives so much better. Because it allows you all to have a structure that will keep things moving forward. And where that structure can fall apart is when life gets busy, life gets hard. But I would just say, go do the short version in the car on the way home. Hey, everybody, let's do a quick whip around check-in, let's just check in. How's your goal going? How's your going? And then the next question would be like, how would you like to be supported with that goal right now? Right. And sometimes kids will be really open and honest, like I forget to breathe in the moment when I'm upset. Would you just say breathe? Or would you squeeze my hand or something? Right. And you'll be surprised, like, kids actually like having support with these goals that will improve their resilience and emotional regulation and everything attached to it. So those are some things that come to mind when I think about these questions. Now, when we talk about teens, so we're trying to talk about, 13, 14, 15 into high school, it shifts a bit, because now through middle school, they've already been becoming more peer oriented. So where they're finding their identity, their sense of purpose, their sense of peace, their sense of meaning shifts more to their peers than ever. And so one of the things that we're going to be working on is making sure that we have an open line of communication with them, and that we don't give advice that we weren't asked for, or we haven't gained enough trust for. So here's the thing, the 3 words or 4 words that no parent of an adolescent ever wants to hear is, you don't get it. And then they say, forget it, something like that, right? We need to get it as much as possible as the adult. That's our new job when we're in adolescence, which means we're listening 3 to 5 times more than we used to. We're asking 3 to 5 times more questions, hopefully not ones that are leading, right? Just sort of open-ended questions. Well, how does that make you feel? Or what do you think is going to happen next? Or why do you think she did that? What do you think is going on with her? Right? Which sounds really different from what you might explain to like a 5-year-old. Well, she might have said that because she was mad. Did her face look mad? Was she upset? Like you can't say that to a 16-year-old, right? So you kind of try to like show that you help them build some confidence in being able to observe things, share their observations, have insights, have theories that they're curious, that they can get curious about. I wonder if she's been, she has been under the weather lately. I wonder if that's part of why she's acting this way, right? Like there's some built-in compassion that can come with those, the kinds of questions that we end up asking and working through as a family. There's also ways that we can reflect back to them the kind of people that we see them becoming without it being empty. It needs to be evidence-based. So after you've heard several times, because you've been opening up this line of communication where you're listening more than you're talking, always listening more than you're talking as an adolescent. If you have a quiet one, try to do an activity where you start getting chatting. And then as soon as they start to open up, barely just active listening. Oh, so this is what happened? Tell me more. That's it, really, really allow them to explore what's going on for them with you. And that's how you can kind of stay connected. The other thing is some boundaries around family time, making sure that they're still spending time with the adults in their lives. And it doesn't only need to be you, could also be an aunt or an older cousin or, somebody that they open up to, making sure they have several, if you can, trusted adults that they can open up to, and be checking in with those adults. Anything you've noticed lately that has raised a concern? Anything you noticed lately that's been impressive? Just want to kind of, stay in the loop here. What we don't want to do is probe into their lives too much unless they've given us a reason to. Okay. So I know that a lot of people are monitoring texts and they're monitoring apps and they're monitoring screen time. They're taking phone away, putting phone away at a certain hour. Like all of that is totally up to you and is hopefully in response to something that's actually happening, and not just arbitrary, because kids will be pretty mad about that if it's arbitrary. And I respect all of it and support, being really intentional about it and communicative and respectful. And it that needs to go both ways, right? However, don't miss the opportunity though to fill in the space on the other side of that. It's like we're limiting things, but what are we giving? What opportunities are there? Are we having in-person, are we helping them set up in-person time with their peers in a healthy setting, right? Are we taking the time to set up a yearly camping trip with their two best friends, or taking them to, some space where like other teens socialize and making sure they have that ride, what are we doing to support their alternative to the things we're limiting and taking away? They will really appreciate and respect you more if you, instead of, because what they're thinking is you're limiting my access to my friends. You're limiting my ability to be expressed as a young person, because social media and things like that has a lot to do with the sense of being able to express yourself openly, or at all, in that space. What are we doing to replace that? What are we giving them? And can we have third spaces outside of school and home where they get to thrive in that? Whether it's a theater club or a sports team that's got a lot of heart and a lot of socializing, potlucks, things like that. What are we providing for them outside of that? It doesn't have to cost, right? It could be a free thing. It could be a low cost thing. It could be just, a regular hang with 3 other families that you put together every season. Whatever it is, some continuity for them, some depth, some in-person time, be paying attention to that. And that'll head off a lot of the conflicts that come in teenage years. So last but not least, if nothing else, friends, work on yourself. It really does start with us. Like role modeling can have 3, 10, even 100 times more impact than what you tell a child they should do. Like in a teen and a young adult, like how you show up matters. It's really setting that example, but also just giving them a template and kind of creating a norm of like what they can expect from you and what they could potentially emulate. This has gone so far, so far. So I have, most of my clients are working on, and this is even advanced students who are in their 2nd year of their program, 3rd year of their program. And once they get to the 3rd year, usually they've resolved this pretty well, but they're still doing maintenance on it, which is to like know how to pause and choose your response in the moment. and make sure that that response is grounded in some of the principles and ideas that we've talked about today. So if nothing else, if you feel like this out here, it feels out of control outside of yourself, you can't quite reach your kid and get them to open up to you, can't quite do this right away, it is still progress if you're working on yourself to show up as best as you can. And that has to count, friends. If you don't let that count, you're going to get into a really tough loop of a lot of kind of negative self-talk and anxiety and worry and concern and stress. So at the end of the day, it's not like I did. My kids were wonderfully behaved and everything went smoothly. It's not the goal. It's like I showed up the best I could, making and pausing to make as intentional as choices as I could. And where I didn't, I did my best to repair and own that. If you can say that at the end of every day of parenting and you have access to good resources to draw from, you're going to be fine, friends. Not just fine, you're going to even thrive and create a lot of opportunity for your kids and for yourself and for your whole family. So with that, we're going to close. I just want to tell you that I admire you and appreciate you and respect you so much. And, I really believe that we are calm, empowered parents on our way to raising happy, confident, and resilient kids, because we have this ability to come together as a village and tap into really good resources. I love being a source of these resources, this information, these mindsets that have helped me and so many, now about 1,000 families navigate this very exciting, meaningful, and challenging time. So please let me know what you need. Like I said, there's a lot of ways to engage with what we offer, but also sometimes I can point you to resources that make sense for you right now. So don't be shy. Let me know. And I'm here for you. I'll be checking comments on YouTube, comments on the Facebook group. You can always feel free to email me directly, raisingourresilience@gmail.com, or hop on my calendar and check out our free guide and program in the links at the bottom of this. Share, like, subscribe, all the things, tag your friends. This is a free resource that if you found anything valuable today, make sure other people can find it. And with that, I will leave you, and good luck with everything. Our cohort starts in July. So if that's something that you're interested in, I want to hear from you soon. So we can maybe even get you some bonuses for enrolling early and get you started with some bonus time with me and the other coaches before the program kicks off in July. So don't be shy. Let us know. No obligation. You're not committing to anything. It's just to check it out and we can see if it's a fit. All right. Lots of love. Until next time. Bye for now.